Okay, I think it's kind of good to start with this graphic, which is just, hold on a second. There we go. Now we're there, right? You can see the graphic.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I think this is a nice graphic to start with because it gives the overlay of the entire Northeast Gateway project. Because we tend to look at it in its individual components, but it's good to start out from a big, high level. Down here is the start of the project. This is Fleischman Boulevard down here. This is Holy Comforter Episcopal School. The area of Welaunee Boulevard that goes through that is in the Canopy Development District. That whole area is under development now. The first phase of it, there's people living in there and there's businesses there, and the rest of it is under construction now and in the future. The road's about 2/3 of the way finished, and we have an agreement. The intergovernmental agency has an agreement with the developer and the city of Tallahassee to reimburse the developer for the construction of the road through that area. It was set at a not to exceed amount, which was, I think, just a little over $5 million based in values from a couple years ago. So we think we're doing pretty good there in terms of just return on investment for the voter. Then Welaunee Boulevard goes up here to I-10, the blue line here. So the PD&E project pretty much starts where the blue line is. This area through here is owned by the city of Tallahassee. This is the planned unit development that the city has approved. And the alignment for this road through the city's PUD has pretty much follows the alignment in the PUD, with the exception of the recent discovery of the tester, what may be associated with today, the Testarena Primitive Baptist Church. There is a historic African-American cemetery that was unrecorded previously in this area. And they recently did some research with the Department of State to record that cemetery in the master site file. And also create a buffer area for where that cemetery was recorded. So before, in fact, the road alignment that was in the adopted PUD went into that area. Whether or not it impacted any actual graves, I don't know, but now we have modified the alignment of the road to completely avoid any area that may potentially or may have at somebody's final resting place, which is pretty important. So anyhow, so there's been some modifications recently as a result of that discovery. And then the road goes over I-10 right here. So we're going to be building a bridge over I-10. This is pushed as far away from the Mahan intersection as possible. There's a certain distance that the FH Federal Highway Administration requires between interchanges. And as you may know, the intention here is to put an interchange here in the future. That's a process that'll be a separate process from the Welaunee Boulevard project, but it's certainly something that we're looking forward to doing over the next couple of years, initiating that process with FHWA to do the interchange. But it's also pushed as far to that Mahan intersection so that we can be as far away with that future interchange from this neighborhood that's right here called the Buckhead neighborhood. The green lines on this map indicate a preliminary line for the future greenway, the Welaunee Greenway, which when connected to Miccosukee will create a 17-mile greenway loop, which is pretty exciting for our community. So it goes over I-10 up through here, through this property, which is owned by a family called the Powerhouse property. And it connects with the Shamrock Street extension, which is connects up here as part of the Northeast Gateway project to connect to Centerville Road on what's called the Shamrock Street extension, because this, of course, is Shamrock Street today going into the Killarn neighborhood. So the agenda item provides two alternatives for consideration by the IA board for this intersection right here at Shamrock and Centerville Road, and we can go into those. One is a signalized intersection and the other is a roundabout intersection right here. Okay, so then it goes, so say we go back to Welaunee Boulevard, we go up and the road starts to curve up to the intersection with Roberts, Bradfordville, Centerville, and Welaunee now, five-pointed area up there. This, let's see, zoom in a little bit. If you were looking at the IA agenda for Thursday, we also have on there a consideration of a substantial amendment to the Northeast Park project, which is a separate project from the Northeast Gateway project. But we wanted to show generally where that park may go, just so that you can see the relationship to the Welaunee Boulevard project. And it's likely providing some sort of access between the two for the park users and etc. So that's not a part of the Northeast Gateway project, but relevant nonetheless. So anyhow, it goes up here, generally to intersect up here with Roberts Road. This triangle here is the original, I think it was 120 acres that the school board purchased in maybe the mid-90s, I think, and to build Roberts Elementary and Montford Middle Schools. After they purchased that parcel, there was discussion in the community. I personally was not a part of that discussion, but it happened around 1999. And the concern was, hey, you're putting these schools out here in this fringe part of our community. The city limits line is just out here. The urban services boundary is just out here. So what we would like to do is work through this issue with the school board and the city of Tallahassee at the time to establish a conservation easement on the remainder of the property after the schools are constructed, which is essentially what you see here in the green hashed area. And it goes along here, and it has a little break here for the Pimlico school entrance. There's a roundabout right here. This is a property, this little square here is a property that's owned by a single landowner. It's a homesteaded property. So I think it was about approximately 70 acres were placed into a conservation easement. Well, they had a settlement agreement in 1999 and then a conservation easement in 2006 that was the result of that settlement agreement. The conservation easement was there, as I mentioned, to be that buffer between the school development and the rural area. At the time, in the 1990s, there's not a whole lot of development out here. In fact, the land was, the entire parcel with some patches of trees was pretty much just farmland. It was open area. So since the conservation agreement was placed, then this area has had the opportunity for regrowth. So now we see more of a tree canopy in this area now. And so that's why a lot of the trees along this area are not super big trees, because it was really just a farmland that's regrowth. And it's a valuable asset to the community in terms of the tree canopy. But it's important to note that it was for the rural buffer versus a significant environmental feature at that time. One other thing to mention, the conservation easement and the settlement agreement both explicitly state that that by no means does the city or their agent, in this case maybe Blueprint, would waive their right to, hey Talithia, that would waive their right to doing through the process of eminent domain or willing acquisition of a part of the conservation easement for linear infrastructure, which could be a road or it could be utilities. So the conservation easement and the settlement agreement both explicitly state that there could be a road that goes through here someday. Okay, so that's high level. But I'd like to go ahead and jump to the different options for the intersection.
Yeah, because I definitely have some questions about these. Actually, can I just interject real quick on the conservation easement? Because you did say that it doesn't prohibit the use of eminent domain. That is correct, but it does say explicitly in there that construction of infrastructure, including roads, buildings, and other things are prohibited. So yes, it doesn't prevent you from exercising your use of eminent domain, but the contract was a settlement, and it was a settlement between those people that you mentioned in the school board, because the board had bought the land before they had figured all this stuff out. So to me, that's a bit of a red flag, because yes, it doesn't prohibit the use of eminent domain, but I think they have a pretty good case here. And I know Randy Denker is the one who's representing them. So
yeah, I don't think we're saying anything too differently.
Let me address the legal issue here. What really we need to focus on is the statute. Florida law section 704.06 is the Florida statute on conservation easements. And it clearly states that even for a perpetual conservation easement, you can have, the government's not prevented from doing eminent domain. So when you set up a conservation easement, you clearly will have language in there about what's allowed, what's not allowed. But the focus is really on the statute, which says, even though you set the conservation easement up, you still are not prohibiting the government from taking action for eminent domain purposes and establishing transportation corridors. So that's what you really should focus on.
Well, I mean, that's correct. It also does not give up the right of the landowners to fight that. And
Well,
as you know, the use of eminent domain, you have to prove that there are no feasible alternatives, correct?
Sure, and the statute 704 does state that there is a judicial review of that. So all of that will undoubtedly end up in a court setting. And that's what the court is there to decide, whether or not there is a true public benefit to the conservation easement versus the public need for a transportation corridor. So that's not to say, given all of that, it doesn't mean that because you have that statute that says there's eminent domain, that there can't be a challenge to it. There certainly can, but the right of the government to proceed in eminent domain is certainly supported by statute. And that's recognized even in the settlement agreement. Even the settlement agreement and the conservation easement document clearly state that the city did not waive their right to eminent domain, that any other governmental entity did not waive their right to eminent domain. And even both documents quote 704. So I just want to make sure you're aware of that.
Yeah, I am. I've read it. I thank you. I do understand, but again, the government is going to have to prove that there are no alternatives, feasible alternatives. And to further expand upon that, my question is, this was an agreement that was made between the city of Tallahassee, the school board, and private entities. I mean, do we just not care that this agreement was made back then? Because I know there are a lot of people that are concerned about the use of eminent domain.
I think you bring up a valid point about alternatives. And I think that it's worth it to walk down and look at these 4 alternatives because I think that we could probably share some valuable information for you. So do you want me to go into the Centerville Shamrock, or do you want me to?
I do, but I would like, if you don't mind, I'd like to address one more thing before we do that. You said that in this conservation easement, it was a lot of farmland, right? And there wasn't a lot of trees and other large trees. Is that because I've looked at the tree survey, and if you take a look at it, let's see if I can pull it up here. Well, if you look at the tree survey, I know it says, and actually the recommendation says it does not impact environmentally sensitive areas. Well, I would disagree with that, because in the pathway is an 85-inch wide live oak, that's 7 feet wide. There is a 48-inch loblolly pine, and the state co-champion, which is the largest tree in the state, is also in Leon, one of them. It's only an inch bigger. So this is an old growth tree.
And we saw that. There are the site survey with Mindy Mormon, and also had obviously we did the survey itself with the survey team. And I was actually just talking with Dan this morning or yesterday about that 85-inch live oak. That's not in the path of the road.
Well, that's why I'd asked, because there is not a lot of information where that road is actually going to go. There is a tree survey.
That's why it's good to have these conversations, right? Because I think, we all bring things to the table that help us to understand your perspective from your side and science stuff from our side.
Sure.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you continue to look at the survey, there's all sorts of large sweet gums, there are hickory, and these are all huge trees for these species, between 30 and 50 inches wide. And there's a pair of 5-foot wide oak trees. And if you look at our land development code, this if this doesn't qualify as successional forest or native forest, then I don't know why we have a code at all, because that in particular are conservation and preservation features that should be protected under our code. So,
well,
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess then one of the things that we want to think about when evaluating these alternatives is the length of the roadway itself, right? Because the longer the roadway, the more you impact whatever is in its path. Even when you, the good thing about building a road in a greenfield is that you can avoid things, right? As you get closer to tying into the points where you need to, it's harder and harder to avoid. But like Weelaunee Boulevard within the Powerhouse property, I mean, we've had a lot of, we've been out there and we know where we can go around the big trees and try to minimize impacts to gosh, any environmental features. There's some areas that, we're going to have to cross a wetland with Weelaunee Boulevard south of the schools. There is no way around it. But what we're doing is putting that road on the area that is the most narrow and to have the least amount of impact. And that really gets back to your point, Max, about, when you have no other alternatives that exist, do you have to do this? And I think it's worth it to go into some of these other alternatives and sort of and talk about it. So I'd like to maybe skip over the Shamrock one and we can come back to it. I got no problem there, but I think since we're on the topic of
well, actually, I would, if you don't mind, do the Shamrock, because that gives us a little information as we go up. I thought that would be a good place to start.
All right. All right. So, okay, let me go on back. So we've got the two alternatives for the Shamrock intersection, one being the roundabout and the other being the signal. Our staff recommendation is the roundabout. We've also presented this to our technical coordinating committee, and the technical coordinating committee supported the roundabout option here, as well as our citizens advisory committee last week. One of the reasons that this is a preferred option is because it allows us to actually straighten out the kink that's in Centerville Road. If you're familiar with that intersection, you may realize it's on a curve, and as a result, it has sight distance and safety issues there. The roundabout allows us to straighten out that kink. Alternatively, it does have a larger footprint than a signalized intersection, so you do see more removal of trees. In this case, we can go in and we can selectively plant some trees for the long term versus having a short-term fix that may result in removing more trees in the future as you go into make other improvements to this intersection. We like it also from a maintenance and operations standpoint. It doesn't have a traffic signal, so if there's a power outage along this way due to hurricanes or whatever, people can still use the roundabout as long as there's no trees in the middle of the roundabout, of course. Let's see what else. Oh, because of the roundabout configuration, it continues to provide the access to these commercial businesses here, whereas the signalized option would require some different kind of circulation for getting into that commercial.
Could you share your screen, Autumn? Sorry, I kicked you off when I put mine up.
You can see it. I'm sorry. My apologies. Yeah, totally talking to it like you could see it. All right. So, okay. So mainly you can see here the center of the roundabout is the existing road is in the pink or the salmon color here. And so the roundabout kind of moves it out and works that kink in the road out for safety. Roundabouts are safer for traffic. And that's primarily because cars have to slow down to get into the roundabout. They get down to that 25 mph speed. So, and they're also going in a circle. So when they do more sideswipe accidents, which of course are a lot less dangerous than your traditional kind of T-bone accident that happens when somebody runs a red light, which would be the case at a signal. FHWA recently came out with a study that actually put roundabouts as more safer for pedestrians as well. So that's something to think about. And let's see, we can still provide the greenway connection here, but that's equal between the roundabout and the signal. The roundabout is more expensive, primarily because it does require some right-of-way acquisition at the corner of the property that's owned by Celebration Baptist Church. And it's a bit more expensive to construct than a traditional signal. Did you have any other questions?
Well, yeah, I mean, in general, I support roundabouts. I think that is a good option, but my question is over to your right where your next roundabout is. And there is a wetland feature there, which is actually a solution sinkhole. And if you look at the topography of the area, everything drains there. So if we're talking about minimizing impacts, are we just going to fill in that sinkhole? This is a sensitive environmental feature. So wouldn't that be something that we avoid?
Right. I had the same question because I thought to myself, like, well, why are we talking so much about avoiding the floodplain and the wetland impacts up on alternative D, where the impacts are pretty significant? And yet we're showing this here. So Dan Shear's on the call, and I think he can answer that question. He's the engineer.
Yeah, certainly. Thank you, Director Calder. So we're basing a lot of this off of GIS, and that's the best information we have. But at this time, nobody has actually been on the property to survey exactly what the topographic and hydrologic features are. So that includes all the floodways and pathways. Now, we have driven and walked the area where we're crossing the floodway to the north of here, and we are crossing at an existing crossing that the Powerhouse property has already established across that floodway. And that's one of the reasons why we identified that location, is there already is a vehicle tractor access across the floodway there with a built culvert system. So we won't be adding any degradation per se. We'll just be crossing in that same area, which is a great opportunity for us. But and Max, the awesome thing is this is just this is not surveyed in. We don't have coordinates. We haven't laid this in perfectly. We're showing the best general alignment that we can show, but we can still waggle, as the director talked about earlier, around big trees, around nice features. We want this to be a very beautiful road for as long as we can make it that way before this land potentially moves to development. In the interim, charge Ryan with, hey, we're going to get out there and we'll do a full tree survey along this proposed right of way and throughout the whole property to be able to identify those significant features that we want to avoid. And my charge to Ryan and his team is we're going to avoid those. We're not locked in. This isn't written in stone. So if there actually is a hydrologic feature there where the GIS is speculating there's one because no one's been out there and surveyed it, then we will definitely modify the final design to avoid that. But again, this is all high level PD&E. So we are trying to do the best with the best information we have. And I know Ryan and I can shift that alignment a little bit to the west, shorten the Shamrock extension, or shift it a little bit to the east and extend the Shamrock extension and avoid that hydrologic feature very easily if it actually exists in that location. But we really won't know until our surveyor gets on the ground.
And Dan, to that point real quick, I don't want anybody to be confused. That is actually a high spot at 160 feet. That is not a low spot. So you're sitting actually on top of a ridge, which is again to the importance of, after we get out of the PD&E phase, of getting our surveyors and our geotechnical and environmental folks out there to look at some of these things. It's a little bit peculiar that you'd actually see a wetland sitting right on top of the knoll, but again, it's GIS level data, and Dan's exactly right. If there's a little wiggle and a waggle that we need to do right there, but then we'll seek to avoid it. But the reality of it is that's a high spot, not a low spot. I don't want anybody to be confused about that.
Okay, well, I mean, that's, my whole issue with how most of these projects unfold is we don't have all the information when the decisions are being made. So why haven't the surveys been done? Why haven't we been out here and logged all these trees and figured it out before the PD&E comes back and before the board is voting on locking into an alignment?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I understand, like, it would be great to have like every bit of information, but we really need to have the board approve a general alignment swath, if you will, or a corridor for which we can wiggle and waggle within, because then we can invest the dollars in doing the survey and the deep look into the analyses that's required for figuring out where those wiggles would go. And I think that that's maybe where we're getting, the process needs to be identified. With the PD&E, it's a high level study of identifying, generally where the road will go in that corridor or swath, and what the intersection treatments will be at some of those critical intersection points. But the design work actually begins after the PD&E study. So yeah, that's when we really kind of we do a high level review of stuff with PD&E, and we zone in on certain areas that we may need more analysis. Like, for example, doing that tree survey, we knew that trees are important to this community, and they're important to us too. And we do what we can to avoid them and retain them. I can see your skepticism. You're yep. aware of it, but it's absolutely true. I mean, we value them as much as the next person in Tallahassee does, and as people. But of course, as blueprint staff, we have a process. And anyhow, doing the tree survey at this point in the project is actually out of the order for what's typical in a PD&E. That was actually us going and doing a bit more than what's typically required.
Okay. Well, thank you for that explanation. I can only tell you, if I were sitting on the board, I'd say, go back and get me more information so I can make a better decision. Because with this level of information, personally, I would not be able to make a decision. I need to know what feature that is. I need to know if there are any significant sites or cultural areas before we even spend any more time. But if you don't mind, we can move on, because I would like to get to the stormwater stuff and move north to the options there.
Yeah, alrighty then. All right, so 4 alternatives for the northern connection. The first is the one that we recommend, which is also recommended by our technical coordinating committee. They recommended this 5-legged roundabout, or alternative C, which we'll get to in a second. And then our citizens advisory committee recommended this 5-legged roundabout. And our recommendation is this 5-legged roundabout. So as you can see, Welaunee Boulevard, it's generally, for all of the 4, it's pretty much this point right here, just north and west of the D and Boulevard, where they start to be different. Alternative A, B, and C go up using primarily the conservation easement up to about, am I sharing? Yeah, up to about here. And then there are, so off of the homesteaded property that's owned by Mary Alma and Dave Lang, right in here, their home is right here. So the road is on the conservation easement side of the property line. And that's, I think, the tree that you identified, that 85-inch tree, I think is right around here, right, Dan? Isn't it just south of the school board?
Pimlico? Yeah, it's in that area somewhere.
Yeah, so this road,
barn, right? Yep, right where you're handing, right there.
That's right, exactly. So the Langs have a pole barn right here, so we avoid that pole barn, and the tree is on that property. So anyhow, and it has this connection to the school property, which was requested by the school board, and then it goes up to the intersection here. And I know that you noticed this, Max, but what we were able to do is situate the footprint for the circle for the roundabout around the 71-inch live oak tree that's right now sits on the corner of Centerville and Roberts Road. So it does shift the intersection slightly, but it's a good thing because it helps us to retain that tree there. It's a single lane roundabout. On the order of magnitude of the Ox Bottom and Cary Forest roundabouts, or if you will, I'm sorry, hang on a second. Hey, I'm in a meeting right now. You don't have to vacuum back here. Thank you. Anyhow, okay, so Orange Avenue and Jim Lee has a roundabout on it, right? Mm-hmm. And the difference there is that's a 2-lane roundabout. So this would be a single lane roundabout. So actually slightly easier to navigate because it's only 1 lane versus 2. Orange Avenue's 2 lanes coming in. 4 lanes coming in versus here, all these roads are going to be 2 lanes. So So yeah, there you go. It does require acquisition of some of the Archibald property, a little bit there at the St. Philip AME Church, a little bit here on this corner, and of course about 10.5 or 10 acres of the 70-acre conservation easement. As you can see, let's see, what else do we have here? It's A, B, and C are the shortest. D is about a half a mile longer, so it has more impervious area than A, B, and C. It uses the existing topography. It's relatively flat. It's a high land, which I noticed. I know you noticed the hardwoods that are on that in that area. It's a little bit more expensive than the five-legged signal by about $550,000. All right. B is the five-legged signal. I don't know how much you want to talk about this one. The only one
I mean, really A, and I would say D, and which is the circa
okay.
Recommended, because I think those
the only thing I want to add about D is it was recommended by our TCC, so I don't want to walk past that. And the reason is because it does maintain that four-leg intersection, which is a benefit, a transportation benefit. But it does include more impervious area, as well as the impact to the homestead, a bigger impact to the homesteaded property, which is the Langs.
And just to clarify, this is C, not D.
This is C.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, let's go to D. Okay. So D, different from the others, does not, Welaunee Boulevard does not impact the conservation easement. We've provided two alternatives for the school connection. The school board does not like the red connection. So clearly we would want to work with the school board there. The school board likes the purple connection. So I'm not going to say that alternative D doesn't impact the conservation easement, because it does, because of the school board connection. But Welaunee Boulevard itself stays off of the conservation easement in this alternative. The reason this was developed is because we wanted to A, identify an alternative that didn't impact the conservation easement, and B, didn't impact the homesteaded properties like alternative C does, for example. So what it does instead is it takes Welaunee Boulevard, it leaves this intersection pretty much intact as it is today. So the 71-inch live oak can remain with this intersection. It takes Welaunee Boulevard and swings it through about 100-acre parcel right here. The 100-acre parcel is not homestead improved. It does have a planted pine in this pretty much area, this kind of bubble area here, thumbprint maybe. It's owned by some family members. They are in a trust. There's 3 of them. I think they're brothers and sisters. And anyhow, it goes through here, and it does go through a designated wetland as well as a floodway. The wetland impacts are, I think, just about 2 acres, and the floodplain impacts are just 2 acres as well, or something around that area. Like I said, it's about a half a mile longer. Now, purpose and need is an important phrase for a PD&E study. Purpose and need is, why the heck are you building this project? You know, why do we need this project as a community? And so all of the alternatives that we've evaluated for this intersection, we've gone, I think, 15 or 16 different variations of things here. And there are some that don't make it past the purpose and need test. And so the purpose and need test is, does it provide relief for our designated canopy roads for future traffic? So that's Centerville Road and Miccosukee Road. Because by creating this new road, the idea is that all of the growth and the existing people that live out here now and use this area, as well as the future growth for this area, will put pressure on those canopy roads. And it may result in widening those canopy results from that growth pressure. But by adding this alternative, Welaunee Boulevard, we can reduce the pressure on widening those designated beautiful canopy roads. So does this project move enough traffic onto Welaunee? Does this alignment move enough traffic onto Welaunee Boulevard to meet that purpose and need for Centerville, in this case, which would be Centerville Road? It does. It does. It's about as far east as we can go to meet that purpose and need. If it didn't meet it, we wouldn't have proposed it to the IA board for their consideration. If it didn't meet it, it didn't meet it, and that's the big deal. But it doesn't do it as well as A, B, and C. As compared to A, B, and C, 1 in 4 cars with alternative D, 1 in 4 cars will stay on Centerville Road and 3 will take Wilani Boulevard. Whereas with A, B, and C, all 4 of those cars will stay on Wilani Boulevard. So it draws 25% less traffic off of Centerville Road. And therefore it adds 25% more traffic in comparison to A, B, and C on Centerville Road. So it doesn't perform as well. Okay. The other thing about it is from a safety perspective. It is, we're gonna have to bridge through here because of the wetlands. And it is called a super elevated curve, which means that as we go over, you have to actually turn the road like this. And at the same time, you have a road coming in here, which is not perfect. It's doable, but from a transportation planning side, you want 90-degree angles. It's just the safest.
So sorry to interrupt. The Circa concept has a roundabout. Was that considered as a connector to Roberts Road?
We just saw that. Not that it was not sent to us, which in the spirit of communication, it's good to send that stuff to us too, you know, because we can help faster when we get there. But nonetheless, we did see it today and around 4 o'clock today. So we have taken a look at that. And it has a critical problem. One of the reasons that we have this curve, this super elevated curve, is because it keeps people on the road without a stop condition. Now there's a stop condition for the people using Roberts Road, but there's not that much traffic here. We're talking about the Bradfordville to Wilani Boulevard traffic. So by keeping it as a continuous flow, we can meet the purpose and need. But when we put a stop condition here or a roundabout condition at Roberts Road, we lose that continuous flow. And so we don't meet our purpose and need with that solution. But also in terms of the environmental impacts, we're still impacting the wetland with that. We're still bridging and impacting the wetland.
Yeah, I see that. But I mean, how long is Wilani Boulevard from top to bottom?
Ryan, I know you just pulled those numbers the other day.
6.8 miles.
6.8.
It depends on the alternative. This one is, as Autumn said, a half mile longer. And at the rate of speed, a half mile longer is going to result in an extra, minute and a half of travel time. And you add that roundabout in there, and it's going to diminish your speed even more. This maintains speed at 45 miles an hour. We've designed it as such, very consistent with Centerville Road as it is today. You put a roundabout in there, within a quarter mile on either side of that roundabout, you're going to have deceleration and acceleration, and it's going to take even longer. To Autumn's point, you get no less environmental impact, and you actually have an alternative that operates in a less satisfactory condition than what is here in D. So it's, and it would be more disruptive to Roberts Road. You'd be adding a roundabout, a location where there isn't an intersection today. I mean, there's just a whole host of reasons that alternative. We looked at 16 different alternatives in this. These are not the only 4 that we've studied. It wasn't as if we haven't been spending the last 9 months looking at different alternatives. We spent, 9 months, pushing a year at this point, looking at different alternatives. There've been 16 on the table, and these were the 4 that we found that best met the purpose and need of the project, addressed the whole host of environmental, both natural and social environmental issues, the engineering needs of the project, and then going back to that foundational element of the purpose and need statement, could they meet that? And as Autumn said, I mean, we're only presenting a quarter of those that we evaluated based on both our public engagement and all of our environmental and engineering analyses.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that explanation. I think I'm going to have to disagree with you on the environmental impacts, because this road already goes over wetlands. It also does a lot of things, and preserving a native forest is a lot more important than taking out slash pine. And yes, Deanna.
And wetland.
And well, you're already going through it. So where's the concern there?
Well, it's exactly what you said, which is when no other alternatives are present. And in this case, There are 3 other alternatives that are present.
Well,
that
I think we're just going to have to disagree because the social, I mean, all the landowners are in agreement, cultural. I think the environmental community is also in unity that this road should not go through the conservation. And we'll see what the board says. But Deanna, you had a comment? I'm sorry, Autumn, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Deanna,
Yeah, I was just wondering what's happening to all that impervious area. Just because, I mean, if you do a quick calculation, 7 miles times 24 feet is like 900,000 square feet of newly impervious surfaces in a wetland. And I would hate to hear that it's going to drive a stormwater pond, or you're just like, you know, adding it to the stormwater pond down south. Does that make sense? That was a horribly.
I mean, they're going to have to be a whole series of ponds, and I would like to get our discussion to the south side and that stuff before we run out of time. So I know we're talking about this a lot.
Well, on that topic though, with the stormwater ponds, that this alternative will require more stormwater ponds. And Deanna, your point is well made, because it is a ½ a mile longer. So you are getting more impervious area, you know, for which you treat and for which you impact the natural area. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, this whole area is going to turn into impervious surfaces. I mean, only 40% of this area is going to be kept as natural. So you're going to have supporting stormwater infrastructure all up and down this, right?
You know, that's fascinating, because it's thinking about it from like a private sector development perspective, right? So say that trust that owns that 100-acre parcel wants to develop that 100-acre parcel. They would not be able to develop in the wetland. They would not. The Leon County Development Code says, no way, you stay out of that. You've got other high land, the pine area that you can develop, and you can develop that, but you cannot impact the floodplain or the wetland in this case, right? But here we are with an alternative that impacts that. It's very much in conflict with the goals of this community in terms of the comprehensive plan and impacting our environmental.
Yeah, well, then we shouldn't build this road at all, because it impacts the wetland to the south. We should figure out how to get it around there. I mean, you know, I don't really see how that's just me. But again, I would like to steer this conversation to the south side, because this does bring up the stormwater issues, and that's really what we're here to talk about. If you don't mind, I just want to.
No, I'm fine. I saw 2 topics. This one and yeah. So,
great.
All right.
So,
well, I'm stop sharing, and there you go.
Yes.
I'd love to just take a pause for a moment. I'm so grateful for the robust conversation that's happening here, and I'm surprised by it. Max and I had sent emails, Autumn, that I know got forwarded through Blueprint, to invite y'all to a discussion to talk about these things, where we would invite local community residents who are interested, whom would be directly impacted by these plans. We didn't get response from that, and instead I got a text from you, Autumn, personally 3 minutes before this meeting started, to say that you were coming, and it looks like an organized event here. And I know you all at Blueprint are really busy, working your tails off, and here you are surprising us collaboratively at a meeting. And it feels odd. This is a committee that's a working group to think about environmental justice issues and how to empower residents in Tallahassee through the Democratic Party. And if we want to talk about purpose and need, the plan was that we were each going to go around. We have some new people here tonight that we're excited about activating and energizing around environmental justice issues in the city. I feel like that's getting bypassed, and I just want to take a check about what we're doing collaboratively, and how is it that you all showed up, I believe, with no notice to this work committee.
Well, first of all, thank you for kind of resetting this. I appreciate that because it is your meeting and yeah, absolutely. So whatever journey it needs to take, please help to keep it on the path that you guys have your mission for this meeting.
So what we would like, we're really happy that you wanted to show up, but we would have preferred that you showed up to our invited meeting where we have, again, local residents that are interested who will be directly impacted, who would like more support to ask questions, which is not us here right now. So I feel like it would have been a more productive choice if you had responded to that invitation and we had been able to schedule out this discussion so that the people who will be impacted would be able to address questions with more support. So I'm wondering again, just to take a pause and a breath, what do we want to be doing here? What are our goals? And Max, I want to support you as our chair to establish where are we at. We have some new members here that bring a wealth of experience to environmental justice work that have shown up to the committee for the first time. Would we like to hear an introduction from them and focus on what our agenda is for the meeting? And it looks like we have such interest from Autumn, who I know, and other Blueprint folks who I don't know. If you were able to sort of spontaneously make it tonight, of course, you'll be able to make it again to a meeting that we'll have planned. And again, that we can bring in more people that would speak more directly to the questions that are on the table.
Well, thank you, Claudia. You're always the voice of reason here. Yeah, I was expecting to hear back from you about this meeting or another future meeting before showing up. So thank you for mentioning that. For me personally, I would like to hear from some of the other people that have shown up, just a quick intro, but the real topic for me is this Capital Cascades 4 and the 3dB pond, which is, again, my favorite subject. I wish it weren't, but it is. And I, again, have some questions. I've gotten some answers back from you recently through Commissioner Maddox. I know that he'd asked some questions, and I'd like to discuss that and where we're going with this Capital Cascades. So I don't know, Claudia, what do you think? Should we do the intros or should we just go into the questions that we have?
Well, I would offer again that that we get more into the nitty gritty when we have more residents who will be impacted. That was our plan. Yeah. And again, we had some very enthusiastic Blueprint members that showed up unexpectedly. And I would offer that we set a date right now and have that conversation when we're ready to, and we stick with our environmental justice democratic plan, which is not to get into policy debate on this, but to talk more generally about engaging and activating our residents through the city. So
sure. I do have some very specific things I would like to go over because this is affected by Thursday, and I was hoping that we'd have this meeting scheduled before this coming Thursday.
Of course.
So maybe.
Well, actually, Claudia, I think you bring up a good point. You know, the policy decisions is the board's. The staff that, you know, are on the call now, and Ryan and his team, you know, we don't make those decisions. So maybe we set something up for a later date. Hopefully we've provided some value and information that's, you know, helpful to your group. So Autumn, what say you?
My calendar's open. I'm ready to look and find a date.
Okay.
Okay, Max, I'm hearing, yes, we can schedule ahead. And I'm hearing you had a couple key questions
I
that
do have
you could get to concisely. And that way we can span our committee material. And since we have the privilege of having these folks with us now, let's cover all our bases. And Max, can you know, I would support you on behalf of the committee members to ask the specific questions you have, if y'all can respond to that. And then you're welcome to stick around to the nuts and bolts of our meeting later on. And of course, we'll get our bigger meeting scheduled as well. So Max, the floor is yours. For
okay, well, thank you. Now that sounds great. That sounds great to me. So, you know, I have had a little bit of an issue with this Capital Cascades 4 and how the RFQ process has been handled. I know that this is the standard policy that Blueprint has, so maybe I'm complaining about the actual policy. But the entire point of reaching out and resetting for segment 4 was to keep the two-way communication, and I read the after action report, between the interested parties. And I didn't see anywhere on the website these responses to the RFQ. It was advertised for about a month. There were only 2 responses. They were both local firms. You know, I would have liked to have invited others to respond to the RFQ and be that resident driven, the people who are going to be affected by these, to look at these proposals and have some input. And it seems like the board should have some input as well, without making a decision unilaterally without this type of input. And, you know, I watched the website, I look at all. I did not see any of this stuff going on, except for maybe one sentence in the consent agenda. I will say I did review the RFQ. I'm pleasantly surprised. I think it is pretty decent. There's a lot of other stuff I would include, and hopefully that will be coming in the future. I'm very happy to see Jones and Jones Edmonds, who's doing the stormwater modeling. They're an excellent firm. I do have questions because I know the 3dB pond will be starting tomorrow, or at least the notice to proceed will be given. And, you know, I did get some responses back from you, and maybe I can share my screen here so other people can see it as well. And for me, again, this is all about holistic planning. This is about getting all of our facts, all of our surveys, everything in a row before we're committed, before there's money, before there are displacements. And there are a lot of people scared about, I'm getting calls and emails every day about people in Alberta Empire, people who live in Bond, people who live in Providence, Liberty Park, because I am the only one in this committee who is getting this information out to people in a real way. So I did have a lot of, you know, specific questions. This was the background information on the procurement, which you've answered. I did say my responses are in blue. You know, we have this memorandum, and I did send an email about a linear infrastructure variance and why this was allowed to move forward without one, because I keep hearing it's a linear stormwater system, linear park. And there are specific approvals when you look at the tree planting and the variances and all that sort of thing. So I was very curious, you know, what kind of modifications are we going to have to make to these ponds? But it seems to me that there is no way to even know, because we haven't studied the Capital Cascades 4. And it's my understanding that there is a new stormwater model that's being developed, a preconditions model for the St. Augustine branch that terminates at the 3dB pond. And the study area for Capital Cascades 4 starts at that very point, the confluence of the St. Augustine branch and the central drainage ditch. So if we are developing both of these tools, which are excellent, these are excellent tools, why are we not waiting until that happens? And see, it's currently underway. So I think you answered that down here where you said, let's see, it's critical that Blueprint in the city of Tallahassee be able to quantify the benefits of the improvements of the capital cascade system and this new pre-development model, right? While simultaneously leveraging the opportunity with capital. That's great. We're in agreement there. But again, why are we not using the tools that are being developed now? And we made a big deal about this. We were told the pond had to go here. This is why we had to displace people. Some of the lowest income and most vulnerable people in our entire city and county. This pond had to go here. We had to do it this way. But the response is that this is a relatively small cog in the network of the CCT system. It doesn't have a significant capacity to retain significant amounts of stormwater or for the entire branch. I mean, that's really not what I was hearing when we brought this attention to people, to you, to Blueprint, and to the commission. And it's not just you. I know the decision makers make their own decisions, right? But even asking, saying, well, if we wait, it will not yield any additional benefit for the system and eliminate the opportunity to optimize using a holistic calibration effort of, well, that's what we're asking for, is a holistic look before the thing is constructed. I mean, if we had to wait 2 years to permit it, we could wait another 2 years. And really, how do you know if the anticipated results are only minor, if we do not know what the impacts are going to be? And this is where I keep coming back to, we need to have all the information in front of us before we make these decisions. And I mean, again, truly, if this was a relatively small system, why did we have to uproot an entire neighborhood of people and clear cut what should be considered a conservation area with large trees? And then I was reviewing the information that Jones and Associates provided in their proposal, which has been accepted. We understand that if proposed stormwater ponds are coupled with amenities like Tallahassee Junction or Cascades Park, will need to exhibit a higher level of treatment than would typically be provided by solely from nutrient removal from wet detention. Well, what they're proposing is what we suggested. We suggested that the 3DB ponds be shrunk and install a recirculating pump to protect the algae, keep it from growing, and also remove nutrients. So I'm not exactly sure where I'm going with this, other than I'm a little vexed because there seem to be a lot of different design options that could have been taken and still could be. Why is it so important for us to continue now with this project when the tools are already being developed for the master plan that would also include this project? And that's my first question, I guess. I would personally like to see this move up to Alberta. I mean, we need to look at how all of these things work together. So do you mind addressing that, Autumn? Why are we moving forward on this project when the tools to design such a project are being developed right now?
Yeah, no problem. I am going to have Dan address that, as he's our engineer and it is an engineering answer. I do want to take a second to talk about the first thing you said, which was the segment 4 RFQ. And I appreciate that you recognize the strength of the team that was selected to move forward with the award. We also saw the Jones Edmonds subconsultant as a strength. I was very pleased to see that they had done the Sweetwater project that I know that you had referenced, and to add some strength to our communication and collaboration going forward. the specific requirement of the development of a very transparent, if you will, white paper as one of the very first things out of the project was because of the hard work that you guys have put in, over the last 2 years in wanting to bring our community's stormwater infrastructure up to the next level. So when I had them write the draft for the scope for the RFQ, I said, please do make sure we do a white paper in the beginning that can look at the full breadth of technologies, innovations, and treatment systems, from the simplest thing to the most complex, to see what's the right fit for this unique location, because each stormwater facility is unique and it requires a deep dive. So I'm looking forward to, having you and others that met with us about a year ago to be a part of the kind of the vetting and development of that white paper. That's my intention, and it was when we wrote the scope for the RFQ. So I think that no time is lost. I know that you felt unaware of the RFQ and the process that we use to advertise and use the city's process for procurement. That is a part of our policy, and it does help us to maintain efficiency and the arm's length that we need to be able to do those fairly to all of the bidders. So anyhow, I don't think we've lost any time in terms of the collaborative effort that can be made in identifying the right treatment opportunities for segment 4. So I'm pleased to say that. Okay, now for why now, right? The basic question. Okay, yep. So go ahead, Dan.
Yes.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. So I'm sure the group is well aware, but I'm just going to revisit a little bit of the history. Capitol Cascades Trail is really a facilitation of the entire St. Augustine branch, and that branch starts up around Leon High School. There's a low point there, carries down through Franklin Avenue, Franklin Boulevard, which used to have an open ditch, 4-lane road, flooded a lot, at least when I was in college. Comes down through what was the old Centennial Park, which is now Cascades Park, which has Centennial Field in it as a historical marker, I guess. And then continues south of Monroe Street, jumps over the railroad tracks, continues south on Monroe Street, continues along the new FAMU Way, which used to be an open ditch and now is a covered box culvert, and all the way down to the central drainage ditch, kind of following the FAMU Way path. That's always been the historical path of the St. Augustine branch. And I think if you read our history books, at one time at Cascades Park, there was a fall of some sort where the stormwater actually created a Cascade Falls of some sort. Again, predated my existence on this earth, but nonetheless, I believe it was there. So as part of this project, Blueprint was charged as one of our penny sales tax 27, or this was Blueprint 2000, so before my time, but was charged with implementing this project. And the beauty of those projects that the citizens have approved in our ballot initiative is it binds us, and it's a good thing it binds us because we can grow tentacles and stretch projects farther than we're really authorized or we should. So but the beauty here is this 3dB pond is the last step in the St. Augustine branch, and it is purely a water quality project. So we can all agree that Wakulla Springs is degraded, and we want to do better at Lake Henrietta, and we want to do better in the Munson Slough. And this is a huge contributor. If you just think about that long length I just talked about, from Leon High School all the way through Cascades Park, down FAMU Way, all the way into Central Drainage Ditch, which eventually dumps into the Munson Slough in Lake Henrietta, and then follows into Lake Munson, Black Swamp, all those areas that we all, I think, value as resources in our community. This is a major contributor of stormwater to that. And now the Central Drainage Ditch, which this contributes to, the St. Augustine branch, Capitol Cascades Trail project contributes to, starts way up in Frenchtown, comes down through FSU. There's a lot of contributors to it up there. Lake Alberta is a project that FSU and the city of Tallahassee collaborated on to help minimize flooding at the football stadium area. Very successful. We're getting a lot of water quality. I know we get a lot of trash, and we also have a trash trap there. We're doing a trash trap on 3dB. We're doing a bioactivated media filter. This is a great water quality project. So, I can't emphasize that enough, that if we don't build it, the sooner we build it, the better and longer we're going to gain those water quality benefits. So when you talk about, hey, Cascades 4, why aren't we waiting to do this 3dB pond with Cascades 4? It's really not associated with Cascades 4 from a water quality perspective. We can't modify 3dB to significantly alter anything in the system as a standalone project. So we have alternatives. We have bypass the pond and don't even do the water quality project. We had a lot of those proposals when you were talking about with the IA board that we went through, the different options, the different design options. But in order to maximize water quality for downstream, this is the best project with the space provided and gravity, and where it's located, it follows the historical path of the St. Augustine branch. So it's really hard to fight gravity. I know recirculation pumps and all that, using electricity and things like that. But the bottom line is a lot of water flows through this pond, and we can't hold back enough water to significantly do anything other than what we're trying to do here. And so I can't stress that enough that as a water quality project, it's pretty small. We have Cascades Park, we have Lake Anita, Anita Favors Plaza, we have Coal Chute Pond, and then we're going to have 3DB as all part of the St. Augustine branch. And they're all steps that are increasing and enhancing our water quality along this project. And we even have, Tallahassee Junction Pond as well in this area, in this basin, that are all doing those wonderful things. So to stop this water quality project as a quote unquote master plan, when truly and computer models really can't support this right now. We probably need FSU supercomputer to do it, to run all the contributing basins to the central drainage ditch that really do start well north of Frenchtown, that contribute to the central drainage ditch. If you drive along, it's not Old Bainbridge, it's that other road off of Old Bainbridge, Hartsfield, you can actually see the start of the central drainage ditch up there. And it's pretty amazing system that was developed in our community a long time ago. But the best thing we can do right now is do the most water quality we can. And then we're going to look at Capital Cascades 4 from where the railroad crossing is south, which is, I know, south of Lake Anita, but this is kind of stretching our boundaries as far as we're entitled to do, all the way down to Lake Henrietta. And that project is going to holistically look at that. And when I say the 3DB, we wanted to look at the entire Cascades Trail completed and executed and modeled, like you said, with a pre and post development model, which we're working on right now, to see, hey, what actually resulted in terms of water. Are we discharging early? Are we discharging late? Did we slow it down? Did we speed it up? All these components built on each other. And we can't, the Wright brothers didn't build a B-2 stealth bomber right out of the gate. So, engineers take incremental steps, we evaluate those incremental steps, and we continue to react. And I know Max, you keep saying we got to have all the information, but civil engineering is art and science. It's definitely not, it's not precise to the point that I think you're expecting. And I just want you to know that we continue to build and evaluate. We can model, and then we got to calibrate those models to reality. So a model is only as good as the data we got, and we do the best we can, but we can't predict if rain's going to fall at 3 inches an hour here and 2 inches an hour over here, and how does that contribute? We can't run all those permutations, so we make some assumptions. That's what engineers do, and we build and we evaluate those assumptions, and we get better as we go along. And I'm just telling you right now, it's going to be an awesome thing, and I don't even think you realize it. But we're gonna look at the whole system, the whole Capital Cascade system, from Leon High School all the way down to the Black Swamp, and we're gonna figure out how to best calibrate cutting weirs in structures or modifying structures. Small dollar. When we say minor, we're not building facilities. We're just doing minor tweaks so we can optimize the water discharges and for treatment, and to help minimize as much as we can any floodplain impacts throughout the entire system. If we just pause 3DB and say, wait, we're going to fix this in 3DB, we can tell you that that's impossible. We can't fix this. We can't fix anything in 3DB. I can't stop the flooding in Liberty Park with 3DB. I can't fix Colorado Springs water quality problems in 3DB. Those are what we're doing at 3DB is highly innovative and highly effective. And I think it's if Dan Shear, I support the project 100%. Now, it doesn't necessarily impact me in my life like it does a lot of our folks, but from my perspective, it's a fantastic solution, and I can't believe the innovation and the wonderful things we're doing and the investment we're doing. I mean, the trash trap alone is a great investment for the folks downstream to help alleviate that physical litter and trash. I hope that answers your question as best as I can. But we're just, we struggle with gravity and we struggle with elevations, and we do the best we can in the topography and the environment that the Lord's blessed us with.
Yes, I appreciate that. I think we're going to have to disagree on how technologically advanced this design is. And you said this doesn't really impact you, right? Well, this impacted an entire neighborhood in the construction of this. I think it's been proven pretty much that large wet detention ponds do not provide the type of treatment that we're looking for in modern times. And I would like to look at water quality sampling and testing, but we don't have any, do we? For stormwater ponds, since they are considered untreated runoff. And I mean, I'm curious, do you disagree with Jones Edmonds in their analysis that there needs to be active treatment? And, when I did speak with Jones Edmonds, I called them up. They said they were under the impression that the preconditions model would be completed before construction of 3DB. And it's also just hard for me to look at this project and come to the same conclusion that waiting 2 years to have more information with a master plan wouldn't prevent issues. I mean, are you saying that shrinking the size of the pond and adding a recirculating pump, as Jones Edmonds says, will not provide the level of treatment that it is supposedly right now? Is that not a good thing to do? Would that not have been a design solution? And when you're talking about doing these PD&E studies, I mean, there wasn't even an environmental impact analysis done on this until kind of like almost at the end. Were there any iterations there to look at the impact of the people? And that's what this committee is for environmental justice. This is for the impacted people. I'm sorry, I cannot come to the same conclusion as you can on this design of this pond. It is a large wet detention pond, and there are all sorts of technologies that I hope and expect will be incorporated into CC4 with this new relationship. But saying this pond had to be here is not really the truth.
No, I never said it had to be there. I never said that, Max. So okay. I appreciate it if you didn't put words in my mouth, but I'm going to tell you, it's a water quality enhancement for our recreational water bodies. That's what I told you. I told you, I just said it 5 seconds ago, we could have bypassed the pond, and we can disagree on the science, and that's okay. And I'm not here to argue with you. I'm just trying to present to you the facts that we know as engineers involved with the project, and you can draw your own conclusions from those. But I'm not trying to say, no, we couldn't bypass. Sure, we could bypass. That was an option we presented to the audience.
I'm not considering even bypassing it. I'm saying shrink it and install a pump.
Well, I get it. It sounds really, it's kind of like someone saying, I put gas in the car, I turn the key and I push on the pedal and it goes, and not understanding all the other mechanics that go and involved in associated with that. So I don't want to oversimplify, but this pond constantly flushes water. So recirculating is not reality, because water constantly moves through this system. It's not a storage detention facility, which is what I was trying to stress earlier. We would call this an inline treatment facility. So the water continually flows through this facility all the way up from north of Leon High School as part of that drainage basin. Water's constantly moving through Cascades Park, and therefore water's constantly moving through the St. Augustine branch. So we couldn't recirculate water to create enough detention time. It's not a sewer plant where we can recirculate the water and we have control of that. We're trying to do the best we can with gravity and topography that we've been given. Incorrect. There are options. There are things we could do, but to bypass the facility and not install the facility. but we're missing out on the water quality opportunity. That was the charge that IA board gave to us. I think it was 2013 when they assigned us projects. So, you know, again, as an implementer, you know, yes, maximizing the land area and building the biggest pond you can is the most effective. Lake Alberta is as big as it is for a reason. You know, if they shrunk that, there was a lot better use of that land, I'm sure, than water. You know, but to be honest, Max, technology, the best technology we have is filters, but the most cost effective is detention, wet detention and ponds. I mean, I have one in my neighborhood. I mean, I'm just trying to say from a cost.
No, I hear you. I hear you from cost, but there are human and environmental impacts. And I think that we're at a crisis point. And again, this goes back to why this committee is here.
I'm with you. I'm just trying to get my information, and I'm going to go ahead
and I appreciate that. Look, I don't want to fight with anyone either. You know, we have opinions. But we are at a point in Florida, a crisis point. We must come up with technological solutions to prevent catastrophic loss of our water quality in our environment and displacement of our vulnerable populations. And Blueprint has $1 billion. I mean, well, we shouldn't really be, yeah.
And I think that this might help, and I would like to go ahead and try to close our side of this out, because I know you guys have important business to take care of. But I think hopefully this can help to dovetail it together. And you know, we are the implementers of what the Intergovernmental Agency Board tells us to do, and we have a list of projects that we've been told to build and implement. There's 27 new projects in the new program, and we can, and we're always looking to find the best balance and solution for those projects, and as we implement them. So if there are ways that that this committee could help us with that implementation of the project, then I think that would be a really great start. You know, it sounds like, you know, you guys are more interested in the human side of the project, at least from what I can tell from the environmental justice.
It's environmental justice includes environmentalism, social justice, and equity. It's the holistic approach, and that's what I continue to come back to, is looking at all of these things.
That's good, because our projects are holistic in nature, and you know, and so I think that, you know, if you have wanted to invite us back to a future meeting, it might be helpful if we could, like, is there a project that you want to know more about? Like, I imagine that Airport Gateway is probably on your radar. You know, would you like us to do maybe a presentation, a 10-minute presentation on Airport Gateway, where the status of it, and, you know, what its goals are, what its description is today? Because I think that's a great place to start, because that's where we start. You know, what has the IA board authorized us to do? And then that's where we pick up. And if you have a fundamental conflict with what the IA board has told us to do, then we can't really help you there, you know, because these are our jobs.
Right.
You know? You guys have jobs. I mean, you know, you got to do what you're do what you need to do. So I think that's maybe where we can start to kind of keep it focused and keep it productive in terms of what we've been told to implement, and then how we can achieve that goal of implementing it, because we're always going to be oriented towards achieving that goal. The IA board has told us to construct that pond. They approved the design concept for that pond in September of 2019. We're going to keep moving us towards that finish line of constructing the pond and having a ribbon cutting. So, but if there are ways that you think that this committee could help to more holistically do that, then yeah, I mean, you know, that's where maybe our next conversation should be. You know, are there things that we could do now for 3DB, or are there things that we have to stay focused on our goal, but for segment 4 or the Airport Gateway?
Well, you know, we've made many suggestions for 3DB. So I don't feel like that has been, and I realize you do have to listen to the board. It's a difficult position to be put in. And I'll call on you in just one second there, Anasa, is is, well, I do have one major question about Capital Cascades 4. Would it be possible to expand the scope to include the Alberta Pond to the north? I see that it was expanded to the south. And this is where this two-way communication would come in, because I've never received an email from Blueprint out of the blue, except for Dan. Dan sent me one, which was the drainage report, one day before the permits were applied for. I've never received an email, period, just out of the blue. Hey, you know, we've been talking about this for a long time. Just a heads up, the RFQ is coming out. Would you like any input on it? So I would like to see, is it possible to extend that north to Alberta to include that facility? Because if we do not have that in there, why are we doing this?
Mr. Epstein, it's close to 7 right now, and I know I have a lot of things to do,
Yes,
so I'm about ready to sign off. And I'm sure the other Blueprint folks have things to do.
Yeah.
I think there's a hand up from a NASA.
Yes.
Is it a question for anyone on the Blueprint side? Otherwise, I want to thank the committee for listening to us. We hope we've provided some value and was able to answer your questions, and look forward to
Thank you.
working with
Minus
you guys.
that last question you did, for sure.
Hey, this was really great. Can you guys, Autumn, you're very patient. All of you guys are very patient. You had talked about a date where you guys might come back and you had your calendar open. Can you throw some their way?
Yeah,
to see
but
what
let's let Anasa ask or speak first. If you.
Yeah, hi. My question is actually for Blueprint people. So I'm a history professor, and as such, a lot of the technical conversation has gone right over my head, because all of this, I think, is inherently complex. It's not something that's like easy to understand, even if you are a reasonably intelligent person, if you're not, versed in topography and water, etc. And I was just wondering, I imagine that Blueprint does a lot of kind of informational output, but I was wondering if there's some possibility of like collaboration on the level of not simplifying the information, but streamlining it so that people can like read a page-long document and understand what's going on. Because I think part of the issue with y'all coming to regular meetings, which I hope that you do, even if that does happen with Blueprint and with community members, I imagine a lot of community members will be starting from a place of ignorance, frankly, because these are difficult issues to understand. And so it would be useful if there was some document or video, I don't know, output that we could work together on that's like, here's what we're going to be talking about at this upcoming meeting. Like, here's what this is, so that the whole meeting is not just technical explanation.
Yeah. Leonard, did you want to say something? I didn't want to interrupt you.
No, I wasn't.
You popped up like on my screen, like big, like you had started to say something. I didn't want to interrupt you.
Thank you.
But Anasa, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really great suggestion to, we're always trying to improve our communication, and sometimes the projects move quickly and we've got a lot going on, but we need to always come back to that point of somebody's just exploring this project for the very first time. They know nothing about it. They just heard some word on the street about it, and providing some sort of like collateral material or some sort of simplified way to share the information about the project is a great idea. We're trying to use more flowcharts in our materials, our public facing materials, because it seems like those communicate easily the project process versus like bullet points or paragraphs. So yeah, I appreciate the point. And I think that the takeaway is that when we do come back with a specific project to talk about, maybe creating something in advance that can be shared, it sounds like. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, absolutely. That would be useful, I think.
Sure.
So might we be ready to hone in on a date and perhaps the segment 4 stormwater, or things that are going on about Blueprint and Southside stormwater development Because I know we do have residents that people are speaking about that would like more information, would like more accessible understanding of what's happening currently and what's projected to be happening in their neighborhoods. So Autumn, I love that you voiced that you had a moment to schedule, and I know our attorney is needing to go, and it's been a long meeting. So Max, is this a moment that we think schedules and then
yes,
definitely move on? Okay. Can I throw out, just for starters, sometime after 4? I would propose 3 weeks. 3 weeks out. Would that give us time to collaborate on our agenda and making our information accessible to our interested residents?
That sounds good to me. I don't know what everyone else looks like, but 3 weeks is a good number for me.
Is that the week of April 26th? Is that right?
1, 2, 3. Yes, that is.
Yeah, that actually is great.
Okay, beautiful. How's Thursday look?
Look real quick. Yeah, I could do. The only Thursday we have a community meeting on Thursday night at 7. So I'm not sure about that, just depending. But Tuesday, Wednesday, Monday.
I mean, Tuesdays are a normal day. Do you want to do a Tuesday, Claudia, or?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll say maybe Tuesday, 5 o'clock, 5:30. Well, we want to think about residents' work schedules. And we also want to think about our own well-being and not having these exhausting days all the time, because that doesn't serve anyone's best interests. So what if we called it 5:30? How does that suit the collective?
That's perfect for me.
Okay, so we've got Tuesday, April 27th at 5:30.
Mm-hmm.
And Max and I will send out a Zoom link invitation tomorrow.
Okay. And if you could send me, it helps from my perspective, because of the need to be the implementers and not the policy setters. It helps for me to know, I want you to talk about Airport Gateway and Capital Cascades Trail Segment 4, or just Capital Cascades Trail Segment 4, whatever it is, but hone it into a blueprint project. That very much helps, because then it doesn't look like I'm out there trying to make policy.
Yeah, actually, Autumn, do you know when the next blueprint meeting is? It's in May. Oh, it's in May. Never mind. I just wanted to get it in before then. So if we're meeting in April.
It's the 27th, May 27th.
Oh, all right. Well, we got a minute then.
Okay. And I'm hearing that Autumn and Anassa may be able to, and then whoever else is interested also may be able to also have some collaborative communications around constructing some messaging that would read and be assimilated more easily by the residents in question.
Yeah, and to just build a relationship and let them lead this. I'm the facilitator. We are the facilitators. I think that's basically what we all do here, but to let them decide what's going to happen. I can provide all the boring technical details, but it's not in my backyard. So, well, thank you. I really appreciate it. We weren't expecting it, but get out of here, see your family, eat some food.
Thank you.
Sure.
And
good night.
Bye.
Blueprint,
Bye-bye.
Thank you for showing up, and give us a little more notice next time.
Yeah, we'll be prepared next time.
Bye-bye.
Good deal.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Thank you.
Max,
right.
can I?
Yeah, we're
Max,
gonna
could
keep
I
talking here
suggest
for a minute. So
Okay.
yeah, we're just gonna wrap up our meeting.
Okay.
And go from there. So yeah. So how do you think the meeting went? I see Meta, you're still here. So I've been wanting to reach out to you because I know you're the Uber environmentalist and Autumn's mom. So you've got a big shoes here. But Yeah, what do you, I was unexpected, so I'm sorry. I know we were supposed to be talking about a lot of other things. So I'm going to open the floor and let everyone else talk first that wants to. So what you
Okay,
got?
I'm gonna be the wellness member here. If y'all don't know, I'm an acupuncturist and I've got a long history of providing holistic healthcare to activists and to people in vulnerable populations. And I personally found that really disorienting and stressful to have a high-powered Blueprint team come totally unannounced to this meeting. And so I want to invite everybody to just like take another breath and shake, and that we're all here for like the long haul of wellness, and every battle may not be our shining hill. And I hope everyone's feeling all right and a little more human, a little better. Max, thank you for fielding that so well.
I'm sorry. I know I dominated the conversation. So you had asked me to work in and use the strength of the committee. I'm sorry, I did not do that very well, but I was also a little off kilter, and I saw it as an opportunity to ask a few questions directly without email. So I am.
It seems like it was productive.
It was.
Yeah. Could we talk about maybe what do we feel like was productive in that? And Meta, I'm wondering, would you be able to come on screen? Many of us have never met you, and you're Autumn's mom, and it's just like a kind of a moment to have you here. Hi.
Well, I've just sort of been recently, because of the League of Women Voters, getting involved in, all the different organizations that have to do with environmental issues. And Steve Bean had invited me to be part of his, I get confused about the environmental caucus that he does. And so I've been attending that. And he sent this one out too. And I was a little bit confused because it was environmental justice, and you kind of hit on that. And I was like, I wasn't seeing the connection. But that's the reason I'm here. I'm just trying to kind of connect with all the different environmental groups since I started doing this for the league last fall. And that's where I'm at. So because I am also Autumn's mom, I don't feel like I can really comment or participate that much because, it kind of sounds kind of weird, but, I'm interested in the environment. That's what I do. As a retired person, that's where I focus my energies. So anyway.
Well, thank you. You are always welcome to participate, even though you are Autumn's mom, someone's mom. But sorry, dogs are barking.
But I can leave now. I just
No, you're welcome. You're welcome to stay. I mean, you're a part of the Democratic Party, right? So you are welcome.
Yeah, registered Democrat for sure. That's no question about it. The whole family is registered Democrats.
Hey, Susie.
Hey, you guys. Yeah, I didn't know what to expect, and it was surprising. I was like, wonder how many of these folks on this call are staff people. So I kind of was process of elimination. But let me ask you, as far as like FAMU Way and that area over there, how much I've driven over there, and there's actually some folks that have a lot of cats that live on Eugenia, and I noticed that I'm on the board of Feline Advocates for Leon County. That's why I brought up about a lot of cats, because we're trying to help this family with cats. So how much of that area is going to be uprooted still? Because I don't know what it looked like before the FAMU Way came in, and I saw where there's some holding ponds already. And I looked at the blueprint online to try to see where does this line up with what the objection is. And the next thing I know, there's a whole nother condo or apartments going up, and behind that was maybe 10 old houses, which one used to, I think, be Cliff Thale's home. And
Yeah.
I'm like, are people still living there? So how much of that area, that Fountain Chapel Church, are those all endangered of just being uprooted and shut down and pushed out by more fast growing apartment complex? Is that what we're like here now
Yeah.
trying to pay attention to?
Unfortunately, we are too late for FAMUA and people that have been displaced. And I've been hoping that Blueprint would take our suggestions, which also seems to be this Jones-Edmonds suggestion, to shrink the size of their pond and save the heritage oak trees that are still there. I mean, that is what's left. And that was an entire neighborhood. Did you go down to see where the new road is being? I mean, we'll start up where you were talking about, where those new condos are going up.
Yeah.
That is the original location of where the holding pond was supposed to be.
Okay.
And we were told that they couldn't put the pond there because they couldn't put a culvert underneath the train tracks, which is confusing to me as the drainage canal already goes under the train tracks. There is a bridge there. So what? You can't build a culvert, so what? Well, that land was acquired via the threat of eminent domain. The people were displaced off of that as well. And then it was surplused just a couple years ago, and the Stadium Enclave developer bought it for $300,000. And if you look, the displacements in Stearns Mosley and those homes that you were referencing, a private developer bought those homes and moved them from Stearns Mosley, which is up to the north where Stadium Enclave is, and moved them to save them. That's the only reason why there's anything left. And this is concerning from an environmental perspective, because if you look at the city of Tallahassee's conceptual permit that they put out last year, they're going to be rerouting all sorts of untreated runoff from that development into Lake Alberta. So the bottom line is you can't take out, dozens or 100 acres worth of forested area or neighborhoods and replace it with concrete and not have impacts. And some of the people there were paid well. Some of them weren't for their land. The ones that held out got paid well. And this is more of a social justice at this point, because even in that neighborhood, people lost generational land after the 2008 crisis. People were losing family land due to back taxes. But then Blueprint said they couldn't build the pond on that site, which I still don't believe is true.
So do we have, I guess, an environmental justice issue? Like, I remember in the day when I was lobbying and I went with Legal Environmental Assistance Foundation to Scambia, and we fought the dioxin mound because it was targeting and contaminating neighborhoods, and they had crosses on their yards, So that's my idea of environmental issue and just environmental justice. So I say that to you is, how many homes and people do we think that are still living there maybe are going to get somebody knocking on the door and swindle them out of their property with a quick sale? Is there something that we want to do, or am I way off base?
No, you're not. I'll get to you in just 1 second, Darwin. The answer is the people who are living in still quarters, which is down to the south. So you know that area, you keep following FAMU, and then you can see the construction that's happening down there, and they're about to start on this pond and take out the trees, the big heritage oaks that are there. They have already been displaced. All of those legal proceedings are over. So we can't help them. I was trying to help the trees and to get a better water quality project. But coming up, the city of Tallahassee is planning this airport gateway, which will have ponds, which will be taking out homes and apartment complexes. And then there's another pond to the north in the Alberta Empire that threatens 80 homes and 80 homes and businesses.
And
And
that's
yeah.
that Alberta Empire. I'm still such a new kid on the block here, so forgive my
Yeah.
ignorance. I've got the analysis, but I don't have hardly any freaking detail.
Yeah.
So the Alberta is segment 4, which is no.
I'm here. I'm
Do
gonna
you
try.
have, like, Darwin's got a question, but
Yeah,
you got a map
okay.
to show us?
I'm
some
pulling that
sort
up.
of-
Let's let Darwin go while I pull
Yeah.
up the map here.
Okay, good.
Well, my question, thank you, Max, and thanks for inviting me, and so did Steve Bean. I'm surprised he's
Sure.
not here. But I'm not really a member of this group, but I've learned quite a bit tonight. But my very question is about the Alberta Empire. Is that the 3 dB pond some of you kept referring to, or is that a different pond?
No. Here, I'll show you real quick here. So I've kind of gotten this down to a science, I hope. So this is the city of Tallahassee's conceptual permit. And this was not announced to anyone. This was not within on any agenda item. Staff did this. And this shows the future plans of the city of Tallahassee in blueprint. And here's Cascades Park. Here's Native Favors Plaza. This is Coal Chute Pond, which is what you were referring to, Susie, where the condos are going up. And you can see here, they're planning to reroute untreated runoff to Lake Alberta from the Stadium Enclave development. But here across the street is this Alberta Empire Pond. This is the Alberta Empire neighborhood. And this, if you look at the satellite, there are 80 homes, 80. I keep saying that, and businesses. And this is why I keep saying it's critically important for this Capital Cascades 4 plan to include this project. Right now, it starts here. This is the 3 dB pond. This is what we were talking about where Boynton Still or Still Quarters used to be. It starts here and it goes all the way down here to Lake Henrietta. And this is the Capital Cascades. It's basically a corridor that we're going to be looking at. But the thing is, if we don't look at this project here, then we don't have a master plan. This is the central drainage ditch. It stretches from Frenchtown, like they mentioned. This is Carter Howell Strong Park, all the way down to Lake Munson. And if you look, every single one of these ponds was a historically Black neighborhood at one point. You know, you're not seeing these ponds up here. You're not seeing them further up in the watershed. Like Dan said, water rolls downhill. They are using gravity to pull it down, and it flows through cascades and down to here, and then outfalls. So right now, they're developing this pre-development model right here, comes down here, and they're also beginning to model Capital Cascades 4. So that's why I keep asking, why wouldn't they just wait until these 2 models are complete? And I hear what Dan is saying, but okay, we've waited, what, 100 years to get this thing built? We can wait another 2 to do it right and have the information. And that's why I was upset about this RFQ, because I would have liked to have some input, because this has to be on there. This is going to be a major displacement. And then the airport gateway is going to come in here through Stuckey Street. It's going to take out 1/2 of the side, the north or the south side. They're going to be displacements. There are going to be more stormwater ponds taking out stuff as it comes down through this. And this is where the environmental and the social justice comes in here, because we're going to spend $60 million, $57, $58 million on this road and pond. Well, we're in the middle of an affordable housing crisis. You know, is this an equitable use of our dollars? Is Providence going to just be taken over again? You know, are the developers are already swooping in and buying stuff. So how do we spend this money in a way that's equitable?
Max, let me ask this. Are there stormwater ponds planned that were not on that map?
Yes. Airport Gateway is going to include ponds, but we don't know what they're going to look like.
And it's going to have a terrific effect, not just on the Alberta Empire, but also on the Providence neighborhood. And I'm
Yes.
guessing Callan, which is south of
Yep.
that. So all those neighborhoods are going to be affected. Do
Yep.
the people, and I'll make this my last question. Do the people living in those neighborhoods know about all this?
Yeah.
And if they don't we need to tell them and help them organize?
Yes,
Okay.
that's what we're trying to do. I'll get to you. Yeah, Susie, go ahead. Sure.
So when I was doing voter registration, I would often go up to the Providence building there off of Highland. And the Deltas, I believe, bought that building. And the guy, Mike Williams, I think, Jr., he ran for office. I know some of the people that are there. The church, isn't there a church right there on
Yeah.
Stuckey? That I know some people. I've been in that church doing voter registration. And the Tonys, I think there's that little, it's quite a little community hub.
Yeah.
Right there. So you're saying you anticipate those people being bought out because they need stormwater ponds, or they are going to be impacted by stormwater ponds, a lot of digging and this and that, and potentially poor air quality because of untreated water.
There will be displacements in the use of eminent domain, which is the seizure of land by the government. So this stuff will be seized by the government to construct the road and the ponds. And that is what happened at Boynton Hill.
And Max,
yes.
Gets to Darwin's question, he said, do those people know?
Yes.
So,
Providence is very well organized. They are aware. They have been fighting the airport gateway for quite some time. They didn't want it to begin with. I don't want to put words in their mouth, but I don't think they wanted it. Now it's happening and they have to kind of deal with it. Alberta, no one has told them anything, period. And I posted this, an invitation or a post about it, and there were like 5 people from Alberta who commented. I'm like, oh my God, we need to get in on this meeting. We're going to have this meeting with Blueprint and figure out what's going on. No one knows. And I mean, the comments that were coming out of that were, well, my dad said that they've been trying to come after this land for years. This is no one has, where are the flyers? How do we know? No one has informed us of this. So Alberta has no idea. I don't think Liberty Park for the Capital Cascades 4 to the south has any idea of what's going on. And again, that's I would have liked to have seen that outreach first before selecting a contractor and all this jazz. Like, it needs to be transparent, this process.
So we have now a meeting on the books with Blueprint in 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so one thing that, the city and Blueprint is an enormous machine. We are not going to be able to stop them, but we can at least help empower impacted and potentially impacted residents to amplify their voice, to bring more press and attention to it, and find some pressure points, ideally in the long term, to steer the city towards a greater environmental justice orientation. And if we can move it even incrementally, that's a win. So I'm wondering if we want, and we don't have a heck of a lot of time. And I hear, Max has an incredible amount of information, and what we want to do is develop a plan to reach these currently and potentially impacted residents and let them know that the Democratic Party in Leon County has their back, and that we are doing what we can to empower their voices and bring more attention to what's going on in their neighborhoods. And I think we need to figure out how to activate that, like, now. So do we want to think, Max, who has connections in these different neighborhoods, and how can we how can we support the empowerment of these concerned residents about what might be coming their way?
Yeah, and I wouldn't even necessarily say we like want to stop it. I know that when our group came to this 3DB and the still quarters, we did say stop the pond, but it was because there was so much conflicting information. It was confusing. I don't think anyone really knew what was going on, including the people who were displaced. You know, we really just tried to work. That's what I'll speak for myself. I showed up and said, stop, examine different options to see if you can preserve some of these trees. And, you know, I heard that in the blueprint presentation, but it didn't really translate, especially in this project. And I'll show you a quick example. You know, when we complained about things, this is July of 2019, and the city came up with a plan to save all of the heritage oak trees. And I mean, all they had to do was widen this median. And if you walk out here right now, there's this like giant piece of open space that doesn't really make any sense. All they had to do was widen the median to save all of these trees. Okay, and this is what I'm talking about holistic planning, spending a little extra time. Okay, well, instead of putting the sidewalk through the tree, you can just come around the tree with your sidewalk, right? You could have kept these trees, you could have kept this. It just takes a little bit extra. These are the only 2 trees that are being preserved. And there's a 6.5 foot wide tree here. There are 5 foot wide trees here. These are all 5 foot wide oak trees. I mean, these are rare. You don't see these, but you know, the translation that came out of when we started complaining was, oh, trees versus people. No, this had to do with the displacement and the entire planning process, because I'm just telling you, if this appeared in front of me as a commissioner and it showed a road over a neighborhood with the pond, I would say, you know, guys, there's a better way to do this. Like, we were talking about this PD&E and recommending different things that don't impact people. Well, where was the consideration here? And it unfortunately follows a trend of development patterns, because it's always the Black neighborhoods. Okay, a little history lesson where, you know, why neighborhoods where they are right now is because we forced people through redlining to live in these areas. And they're usually the low-lying, flood-prone areas. All the rich landowners and the slave owners, they had the choicey piece of land, the stuff at the top, so they could see down. Well, when it comes time to redevelop, who gets hit? It's these people, these that have been in, these were self-sufficient neighborhoods. And you were looking where that other pond is and that stuff, that was another separate neighborhood with a long history of civil rights, you know, generations of people. And we were discovering that they're not being paid correctly either. And one thing that came out of all this is, and I'll call on you just 1 second, Deanna, is that Blueprint will be using the federal standard when relocating people going forward. So there aren't going to be homeless people because they're getting kicked out of their homes. That is one little incremental change that we have seen. And see, the original project was supposed to come over here, that spot right there, and then drain out, and then potentially you could have another pond over here. Really, you could have had the pond here, come over here, put it here. None of these plans that we're doing are going to be 100% perfect. You know, we're going to displace people. We're going to cut down some trees, but this would have been a lot better. And if we'd had that master plan in place, well, have a pond here, have a pond here, have a pond there, and keep your neighborhood, you know? And now we have this Alberta pond, which is huge over here, that's going in. you know, maybe we should design that thing in conjunction with all this stuff going on, because they want to build this stuff now and then go downstream and then build this thing afterward, which is upstream of all of these projects. That does not make any sense. And I said I was going to call on you. I got to show you one more thing, which is, you know, we're talking about how this information gets out, right? Well, this was the first time that the plans for this thing popped up in 2015. This appeared buried in a blueprint update when no one even showed up to the blueprint meeting. Well, this little study area appeared and they approved the study area. And then the first time there was they went door to door twice. And then it was approved within a few months. They went door to door in January 2016, which is the first time any like actual normal person would have heard about it. And it was approved by February. That's how little time people had to organize. All right, Deanna, what do you got?
Also, when I raise my hand, you don't have to call me right away. I just have a thought and I don't want to forget that.
I just want to acknowledge
say
you.
something.
So yeah.
So take your time always. But I wanted to say a couple of things before I got off the chat. One of them was just a thought, and that was it is I don't know how to say this. With the people versus trees, that just means that the people we are dealing with are very narrow-minded and ignorant, because there's never a situation where it's people versus trees. As an environmentalist, I struggle with that all of the time, and you always realize there is a way to achieve both. Like, it's just not. Anyway, so it just demonstrates that we are working with very narrow-minded people, and it's going to be tough, but that's just my first thought. And then my second thing that I wanted to say before I left the chat was, coincidentally, I always update my LinkedIn, and I get like people reach out to me every once in a while. This sounds super braggy and conceited, but being an MIT grad, having the environmental engineer on my thing, every once in a while, a company will reach out to me and be like, hey, blah, blah, blah. And coincidentally, a week ago, Kimley Horn reached out and was like, hey, you'd be a really good addition. And usually they're like kind of generic, but this one was very specific. Like, oh, like I'm in Miami. Why are you in Tallahassee? Like, very specific to me. So I was like, this is interesting. And this recruiter set up, without me asking, a conversation for me to have with the Tallahassee stormwater person at Kimley Horn. And of course I accepted it. I am not looking for a job. I'm joining the military in September. Like, I'm not going to work for Kimley Horn because, I mean, I'm not going to work for anyone because I'm going to be off in Quantico in September, hopefully. So I just wanted to say that. And I don't really know. I mean, I accepted the conversation. I was like, yeah, I'll absolutely love to talk to the Tallahassee stormwater person at Kimley Horn. Apparently it's a girl that I'm talking to. And I figured I could just casually bring it up. Like, I don't know if that's even possible, but I figured I'd bring it up with you, Max, just to hear your thoughts, whether it's even worth bringing it up. Because it just seems like a weird coincidence.
Yeah, I don't know. Nothing, they're locked in. I mean, Kimley Horn is the one who's doing the Northeast Gateway. They did do Cascades. Fortunately, we have a new contractor for Capital Cascades 4. I do not think Kimley Horn is, no offense to them, really qualified to be doing projects like this. And that is, yeah, I'm sorry. I mean, you look at Jones Edmonds again, who did their third-party review. It was pretty scathing. That's, you know, and they know what they're doing. Right. So fortunately, I don't know, if you want, you can, but I don't think it's really gonna do
okay.
Much good.
I don't want to bring it up. I want to get your opinion first, because yeah. Anyways, those were my two things.
Okay, well, thanks.
Oops.
Yeah, Susie.
Oh, sorry. I don't know where you're going with that.
Yeah.
So you guys are like the ones with the knowledge here. Is there a one pager with a picture of the proposed airport gate or whatever you're calling it that will impact Providence and the community on the other side of Lake Bradford that you could make as a PDF and, email it to us, and I'd like to get it to some of the people I know that work at that, Providence Center there.
Sure. Yeah, we need to put that together. Blueprint is still working on the PD&E for the airport gateway. So we don't even know what it's really going to look like. That's going to come out later this year. And all we have really right now is that graphic that I showed you with the big blob over Alberta. But
Well,
again, that's how it starts, So
not to be an alarmist then, Claudia, I need to give you some of your own acupressure because I love that you offered that, by the way. So maybe, is there just something that, little pieces of information and say, we'd like you to join in on a conversation. It's like the marshmallow man right now, and we don't know what it's going to look like, but we want you, or maybe they already are where you said that some of Providence already know.
Max, what about the flyer that we made? Doesn't that speak to what Susie's talking about?
Yeah, it does, but I think we need what she said in addition is a one pager, and then has well, I did make that post where the Alberta people commented on. That is kind of like our pond statement. I mean, we came up with a statement that was released by the DEC. So
cool.
That would be good. Yeah.
Is that something? Yes, sorry.
Max, I was going to ask, can you screen share that?
Yes, I can. If I can find it.
You got a lot of stuff on your computer there.
Oh my God, I have so much stuff. I have like 50 tabs open on my all sorts of research and other stuff, external compensation.
Oh.
And I'm going to need to conclude in about 5 minutes.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if I think we were thinking about meeting twice a month, but since we have this meeting coming up, I wonder if we might be up for meeting next week.
Sure, I'm good with that.
And I think Susie and Darwin, I'm not even sure how to reach you.
Here, I'll tell you what, in the chat.
I'll put mine in the chat.
Great.
Here, I'm gonna put the pond statement in the chat so you can download it and take a look at it.
Really,
yourself.
from the chat?
Yeah.
Cool.
And I know you got to go. I wanted to share just one more thing that ties all of this into the social justice aspect and what we're really dealing with right now. Pictures. I had it up there for a second because I need to eat some food too. But when we were looking at the compensation that was given to people, and these are the tenants who were displaced within still quarters. And there were 20 of them officially, a few people who didn't get compensated. Well, we're talking about two different standards here. When federal dollars are used to relocate people, the federal standard must be followed, and it's uniform. And it appears that Blueprint used that standard to calculate what people deserved. This shows our affordable housing crisis because people were paying $635 a month, this family, so right around this for most, for the rent and utilities for an entire house. What does it cost to find a comparable home? Can't find it for less than $1,100. So we kicked people out. They found the differential, $400.62. This family, if you're there for over 90 days, I think, or a year, you deserve 42 months worth of payments. So this is a blueprint document itself. They were under the federal standard. To actually replace their home, they needed almost $20,000. They only received $5,250. This shows you when you take away one unit affordable housing, you have to replace it with 2, period. So first of all, we shouldn't be getting rid of these affordable housing units. We should be expanding upon them. And to say that this is a maximum program limit, well, since the federal dollars weren't used, they're not legally required to compensate people. And they're not also legally required to provide reparations. Well, if you don't follow the federal standard, you can't get federal grants, which would help that roadway in the future. It would have helped with the construction of it. So it's just very troubling, because if you look at the amount of money that it would have taken to make people whole, it came out, oh, well, I can't release this info. I'm doing this, my research paper at FSU. But I found it was like something like $68,000 was paid to the tenants. Blueprint calculated $220,000. It's $150,000 to help people, to make them whole. This project was $20.5 million, less than 1%, 0.5%. And the land that they took, these homes were generational. People have been living there since the 50s, when Black people couldn't get mortgages. They were lucky to own that land. They've been passing it down. They got about $100,000 for their homes. Okay, what's a comparable house sale? Median, 167,000, something like that, 200. I mean, I think the average home sale is about 200 right now. That means you can't replace it. And it should have just made this project not feasible. And that's what we're trying to avoid in the future in this Alberta empire, all this stuff. Well, maybe there's a better way to spend that $20.5 million. Maybe we spend that to help fix the homes. You know, people have been waiting for this infrastructure for generations to reach them in development. Well, it's time to help the people, not just spend money on contractors and ponds. That's important. We need this stuff, right? We need the stormwater, but it has to be done equitably and not just bully people out of their homes when there are other alternatives. I mean, Dan said it, the pond didn't have to go there. It didn't have to go there. It was expedient for it to go there. And it was the path of least resistance. And Dan can disagree with me, but I don't see any other way of looking at things, especially when you see that student housing starting to come up. And you look at Providence, you look at Bond, you look at all these neighborhoods, they're over 90% of them are renters, absentee landlords. People are hanging on by a thread. They need a pathway to own property, to not pay rent, to move up in the world. And if you absolutely have to take someone's home, if you absolutely have to do it and there are no other alternatives, then you better compensate them so they can move up. And that's what the federal standard allows for. You can say, I need to be next to my church. I need to be next to my workplace or anything of importance and be relocated there. If you worked at TMH as a nurse or a grounds person, you could argue that you needed to be compensated and live in Benton Hills. That'd be an upgrade, right? That would have been equitable if this had to happen. And we kept hearing, oh, well, the houses are so run down. They don't have indoor plumbing. Give me a break. Of course they did. But again, how about we think about things of how much of that 20.5 million would it have taken to fix all those homes, to put new roofs in, to help give economic incentives? You know, it's just, I know everyone's tired and we got to go, but this is the callousness in the planning process that happened. But this, like Autumn said, they have decision makers. It's not just Blueprint, it's these commissioners. It's the people who are putting them in an impossible situation. And Stearns Mosley didn't disappear because of the government. It was private. Well, I say that with a caveat because Scott Maddox and that crew, you know, changed the zoning or did something. There was some big vote that allowed that to happen. So yes, this is all has to do with the people from the top and our planning process. These were important neighborhoods and enclaves of people with a rich history, and it's gone. You better go down there and see those trees before they come down. They're the most beautiful trees I've seen in the entire county, and they were a part of that neighborhood and the culture.
I don't know where they are.
You can drive. Yeah. Well, will be gone tomorrow probably, but here's that roundabout. You come down here, they're in this area. But there were 10 trees there that were 5 feet wide or bigger. And the one, Mr. Benton's oak, that's about to come down, 6.5 feet in diameter. And if you look at the aerial photos, it was huge in like 1930. It's probably 200 or 300 years old. It avoided the clear cutting back then, and it survived until now. And there really wasn't any reason why the pond couldn't have been changed to. The decision makers didn't do it. I give credit to Blueprint. They brought some options, but the decision makers made up these bullshit arguments. We had commissioners saying it would stop flooding in nearby neighborhoods. Lie. Doesn't do that. It's got to be placed above the flooding, not at the very bottom. It was supposed to provide redevelopment capacity for the south side, because right now, if you redevelop on the south side, you got to build your own stormwater facility. Well, Coalshoot Pond and Cascades Park and all these serve the development interests of the north side, 1,000 acres to the north side. Well, they said this is purely for water treatment, right? Well, that's not what was told to the FAMU Way Citizens Committee. They told them specifically this pond was going to help you develop on the south side, and it doesn't do that. So this is why we need, why does it take, this much effort to just get the unbiased opinion, what actually is going on? It's hard for me to understand, and I got in on the tail end of it. That's true. Well, here's the Mr. Benton's tree. It's about to come down. I mean, seriously, this is the most beautiful tree I've ever seen. It's not in great shape. It's not. It's declining, but there's no reason why it couldn't have been saved. And
Max, it's almost as though they've forgotten what trees do. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Don't trees inhale carbon dioxide?
Yeah.
Store the carbon in their trunks and branches and exhale oxygen? Isn't that what trees do? So when you take down a tree like that, where do they think the carbon's going to go?
And
back up in the atmosphere.
Right, and it also absorbs stormwater and nitrogen and phosphorus. It's already doing its job. And the Audubon Society surveyed the neighborhood. They found 30 different species of birds just in the 30 in the neighborhood. I mean, you walked in there, it was like a nature preserve. I live my backyard is San Luis Park, and I got a lot of beautiful birds, but it ain't as nice as that area was. And I just don't know.
Okay, Max.
Yeah.
What's the action item here of this this committee here? If some of that stuff is too late to say, then the next thing is to try to bring, and I'm sorry that we lost Claudia.
Yeah.
It's like, then the next thing is to try to bring awareness and some preventative to some of the others. And listen, Darwin and I, you know, he was did a lot of legislative things, and so did I. And you know, Leonard was a public defender, and Meta, I don't know what you did for a living, and Dina, good for you on being an environmental engineer. But what I'm trying to say is, you know, 20 years for me of lobbying, this shit happens. And I would hate to be a lobbyist today in front of this legislature, because they don't care till arguments and what you're saying. So what is it that this committee wants to try to preserve and awareness to bring? And who are our allies, and who can we work with and bring in the pastors and religious people and other, I mean, my goodness, that Tallahassee community group of people, those activists, they're like amazing. And maybe you know people in that group, I don't. So what's the step here?
I mean, I think that was kind of what this meeting was supposed to be before we got Zoom bombed, right? But you're totally right. That's what Claudia's trying to help organize, and this group, us, to reach out, everything we were saying, to get organized, to reach out to Blueprint, to reach out to the city, and present a united front and get ahead of things, just like you said.
Meta, you can't tell your daughter what we're doing here.
but we're trying to work. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
You don't seem like you're doing anything that's strange.
No.
Maybe she would appreciate the pushback. She's got a job to do, and God love her. She's got great patience. Your daughter has great patience.
Yeah, that is dealing with people like me. That definitely is, for sure.
And so, you know, sometimes you need some, you know, community. And there was a lot. I couldn't participate because of my work, but I remember some of the pushback that happened before with FAMU Way and people losing their homes. And it's that price tag you just showed, that was terrible. So whatever is left standing there is like a little bit, some kind of inventory. And then what do we do to help bring awareness and
we
preventative Band-Aid?
I think we need to get on the street. We need to find the leaders. You know, I know Providence is pretty organized. We need to find Alberta people, and we need to bring them to the table, because I keep trying to stress, I'm not trying to like be some curmudgeon that stops all quote unquote progress, but people need to be in on the plans. These are our tax dollars and they're affecting people. They need to be in on the ground level and to figure out a better way to communicate with our leaders. But how do you make them listen? I don't know. You can present as many facts. Facts don't matter, right? Points don't matter. It's I don't know. So, but that is our struggle. And I think that we should get off of here and meet back up next week and talk about it.
You have our email, right?
Yes, I do.
So send some of those other documents that you have, and that's a good way to open my eyes.
Okay.
Myself.
Sure. Yeah. Meta.
The only thing that strikes me that, you know, I'm not saying one way or another, but I find a little bit worrisome is there's something, and I'm not saying it's true, but it appears that way to a degree, is there something vaguely patronizing about what you seem to be doing. It's like you get this feeling of, we know better for these people. They're like poor innocent lambs out there, and we're going to help them. And I'm not saying that what you're doing is wrong or right, but there is a little bit of that flavor that I think you need to be careful about. That's all.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're right. That is, and we've got a lot of friction from the beginning because of that. But now that we've had these conversations, we're united and we are not any different. And the fact is, people do need help, and we can help provide that. This entire point is to help empower people to have self-determination. If you want to stay in your house and you like your neighborhood, okay. If you want to sell your property and you're going to get a good ass price for it, and that's what you want, go for it. But we cannot have abuses by our government that force people to do these things. And that's, so, yeah.
Some neighborhoods, some neighborhoods feel neglected and welcome outside help, and one of those is Providence. As Max said, the Providence neighborhood is well organized. Walter McDonald III is the neighborhood association president there. And back last year, or actually it was before the pandemic, the Democratic Party Black Caucus approached them about some things because they're in precinct 1313, which consistently has a low voter turnout, and they've been wanting to get a polling place closer to their neighborhood, and they would love some help to do that. They would also like some help with that airport gateway that's going to come through their neighborhood. So they want help and feel like they've been neglected. The Alberta Empire, they're not nearly as well organized.
Yeah.
Barry, my husband, he did find the name of a neighborhood association president.
Tommy.
And it was Tommy Mills.
Tommy Mills,
who ran for sheriff.
Different Tommy Mills.
Area. I think he owns property there, but doesn't live there. So the Alberta Empire is going to be a challenge. And again, if they don't want help, fine. If they want to be displaced, if they want to sell out cheap to the city or to Blueprint, and they want to, have to spend a lot more money to find newer places and don't get reimbursed properly, hey, that's up to them.
Yeah.
There's no way we can force our help on anybody.
To follow up, I talk with Walt pretty regularly, and he was someone who spoke at the meeting or was going to against us because he, like a lot of people, didn't really understand what the project was really about. And it took a while, but we have patched things up and we talk regularly. And I called Tommy, I found him, I talked to him. And he said, "Oh yeah, Max, I know you. You post on the Facebook. I read your posts on historic structures, and I know about what happened on FAMU. We had no idea this was happening in Alberta. Let's talk."
They didn't know about the stormwater pond at all?
No one knows, Darwin. No one knows. Even now, they don't know. It's planned for 2030. But that could start up next year. It takes like 5 or 6 years to plan something like this. So it's happening, and it's going to happen soon. And people have no idea. And we're talking about this master plan and being equitable. I would have loved to see that Capital Cascades 4 RFQ go all the way up to Frenchtown and down, not just that one area. Because you heard Dan say, remember they built Alberta Pond because of the flooding, next to the stadium. Well, what the hell? Why do you think they clear cut everything? They paved it over. It was a swamp at one point where the stadium is, and all that water sheeted down to Alberta Empire, to the south side. And it flooded people down there because of the development of FSU to the north. So they had to build the pond. And that building that pond was only that wasn't pushing the envelope. That was just fixing. That just brought us up to zero. There's no investment on the front end. We're just fixing things. We're not getting ahead of this stuff. And you know where the best location for that Alberta pond is? The stadium.
North. Oh,
No,
the stadium,
the
yeah.
FSU stadium. Rip up some of those parking lots. How many parking lots do you need? So why is that not even a conversation? They've already applied, you know, they have this permit. They're going to put the, okay, put half of it up there, and then you have a way less impact on people down south. Nothing is going to be perfect, right?
It's the powerful versus the powerless.
Right. And when you can buy an entire neighborhood for 5.5 million bucks, that's pretty cheap. That is
Maybe
cheap.
you can get Walter on the call when you have the blueprint people. And wait, you said Tommy Mills was not sheriff deputy Tommy Mills. It's
No,
a
different one. Yeah, different one.
You know, Irwin Jackson owns a lot of property over there.
Oh, really?
He many moons ago, we organized with Irwin Jackson of all people to fight the biomass plant.
Yeah.
And
I like him, man. I don't know. He's a little whack, but hey.
You never know. And Parks, Attorney Parks has a nice house. Bye, Meta.
Bye.
Attorney Parks has a nice house over there.
You know, I haven't seen Irwin Jackson lately. I hope he didn't die of the coronavirus and we missed it, but he has not appeared virtually or otherwise at a city.
That's true. That's weird.
Maybe, hey, stop recording.
Okay.
Maybe